Hey guys, my name is Kimberlea and I'm a recovered alcoholic. I'm coming to you guys from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. I'm actually about 25 minutes outside of Vancouver in a little hamlet called Port Moody. It's nestled right on the Pacific Ocean and there's mountains and lots of greenery outside my window. I am an alcoholic and an addict. I have been in the Fellowship of AA since August 15th, 2016, and I've been sober ever since. Um, I started my journey with alcohol in high school. I had a pretty average upbringing. I grew up in a middle class family. My dad was high ranking in the Navy. I was on the east coast of Canada, and life was pretty good. There was some minor little trauma, but nothing too significant, nothing too damaging, as some would say. My parents got divorced when I was 11, and we moved to the West Coast with my mom. My mom had got remarried, and from there, my kind of journey into the abyss, as one would say, began. I relocated in the last year of elementary school, so I was that odd duck in class, the kid that moves the last year before everybody moves to high school. And I didn't really feel like I fit in. I didn't have any friends. Everybody else had been there since kindergarten, so they had these deep-rooted friendships. And, I always felt like the lone man out. And I started becoming a chameleon because I wanted friends. So if I was hanging out with one group of people, I acted like them. If I was hanging out with another group of people, I acted like them. And I never really formed my own identity. I just kind of floated between group to group. I was a really good student, so I was honor roll, I was on student council, I played athletics, so I was on the provincial field hockey team, third-ranked field hockey goalie when I was 16 in Canada. Everything looked great on the outside, but on the inside, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know where I fit in. I had a lot of insecurities, a ton of fears of judgment, fears of not being good enough, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment from my parents' divorce. And those kind of fueled my life, right? I always was trying to seek validation outside of myself and always trying to find something outside of myself. So I was, so and so's daughter, or I was like so and so's friend, or Kim from the field hockey team, or what's his face's girlfriend. And so I never really was just Kim standalone, and that affected me, right? I didn't know where I belonged. I started drinking at the age of 16 and I loved it. I felt part of, right? I felt bigger, taller, prettier, more confident, more accepted, easily able to adapt in situations because I could become whoever I wanted to be when I was drinking. And that kind of controlled my life. I had fake ID at 16 and I was going to bars with people that were much older than me, because now my identity was Kim, the girl that drank. And it just kind of, that became my life. I got into exotic dancing in my early 20s. I had a roommate in college that was a dancer, and I felt like I had arrived. I was part of the circle in the social scene in Vancouver. I was running with the NHL hockey players. I was meeting famous actors, famous musicians. There was some high profile gang members in Vancouver. So I was getting to go to places where other people didn't get to go to. Other people had to wait in line and I didn't have to wait in line. And I just felt larger than life. And it was what I had always wanted. But it wasn't me. I was playing a role. I was Carly Davidson. I wasn't even Kim. And so once again, I had no identity. My identity was that girl I had created, which wasn't real. I was a bit of a lone wolf, like it mentions in Bill's story. I had lots of people around me at night when I was out, when I had money or drugs or alcohol. But when I was home during the day, no one phoned me. No one hung out with me. I always envied those movies where you'd watch the women go out on the weekends, or the university movies where the girls would go traveling and have girls road trips. I didn't have friendships like that. I was alone. I had my daughter at the time. She was a little baby. And so during the day, I was just this mom student, a nobody. And that was the way my 20s went. I met a guy at a bar because that's always a really great place to meet someone. And I got into the perfect relationship. Everything looked great on the outside. I finished university. I stopped working in the strip bar and, I settled into a life. And here, I was going to leave my past behind me. But of course, there was always that looking over your shoulder. Is someone going to recognize me? Is someone going to, remember me from somewhere? And there was that shame, that guilt. If anybody found out about my past, what were they going to think about me? So there was always this darkness that followed me around wherever I went. Our marriage looked really, really shiny from the outside. A few years in, we both were working union jobs, so we had lots of money. We had the $1 million home. We had the 2 fancy cars in the driveway, the boat in the garage. We had opportunities to travel, and trips to Mexico happened all the time. And everything looked really good. We had that white picket fence, happily married with 2 kids. We didn't have a dog. That was the only thing missing. But behind closed doors, it was dark. I always had that look over my shoulder. He started to get abusive, throwing things in my face from my past. He was very jealous, very possessive, very controlling. And I didn't know it at the time, but that was a big red flag that domestic violence was short down the road. He ended up getting hurt at work, and was home for 2 years, and I was the only breadwinner. And he found himself very resentful of me, very jealous. I was accused of cheating with the guy at the office, or, you were looking at that guy at the grocery store. And domestic violence became a big part of my story. And I sunk into even more depression. So drugs and alcohol and prescription pills became my lifeline. I would drink copious amounts of wine at night, and then do cocaine the rest of the evening, and then take sedatives to go to sleep. And I would wake up in the morning and take anti-anxiety pills and depression pills, and then abuse prescription pain medication all day. I was heavily medicated 24 hours a day for about 5 years. One day, the abuse got so bad that my son joined in. He was 7 years old, and he was taking turns with his dad ridiculing me in the kitchen. And I was like, that's enough. I've had enough of this. I've done. And I decided I was going to leave. And a few nights later, when he was in a rage and drinking, I snuck out the side of the garage it was under the boat hitch, out the side of the garage in the middle of the night, wearing just our clothes on our backs. We didn't even have shoes when we left. And we were off to set off on our new life. He had a problem with drugs and alcohol, not me. I had a problem with a shitty husband. I didn't have a problem with drugs and alcohol. I just had, a dark past that I kind of looked over my shoulder, but I didn't feel I ever had a problem. Nobody ever called me out and said, hey, you might want to slow down, or, you might want to take a look at what you're doing because it's not healthy, because everybody looked like I had it all under control. I was going to work. I had a good job. I was, getting promotions. Everything looked perfect on the outside, but it wasn't. I was the best actor around. I was faking it till I made it, and I never made it anywhere. I started rebuilding my life, and I thought life was going to get really, really, really amazing. I'm no longer with this shitty man. I'm not going to have any problems. I can do whatever I want. I painted my dining room wall hot pink. I was like, this is my new life. I'm going to start over. But the drugs and alcohol followed me. I had a really great day at work, so I'm going to reward myself with a box of wine and some cocaine. Or, I had a really shitty day at work, so I'm going to drink myself to feel better. Christmas Eve, I didn't have my kids, so I'm going to wrap these presents and have 1 glass of wine. And I would find myself with unwrapped presents in a blackout, and I would have forgotten to pick my kids up on Christmas Eve. And now it's Christmas morning, it's 8:30, and I haven't picked my kids up for Christmas. And I'm having to wrap the presents with the world's worst hangover and all that guilt, shame, and remorse. I had no identity. I had no support system. And all I had was guilt and shame and remorse and depression and anxiety and alcohol and drugs. By the grace of God, I met a guy who was sober. He to this day takes credit for everything I have in my life, but I give credit to God. And I was brought into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous through that relationship. And in that first meeting I sat in, they asked me to share. And I was like, oh, no, 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 I'm not part of this. I'm just here supporting him. He's the alcoholic. Because once again, I don't have a problem. I'm always pointing the finger out. And they said, oh, okay. And 15 minutes, God has a sense of humor. I heard my story in that room. And the girl sat and she said everything I had ever felt and everything I had ever done. And she claimed to be multiple years sober. I didn't believe everybody in that room that claimed they had multiple years sober. And I couldn't believe that they had gotten their lives back together because I didn't understand. But I stayed. And I went to 3 meetings in a row that week. And I was convinced that I was an alcoholic. At the 3rd meeting, they asked me to share, and it was the first time I stood up and I said, hi, my name is Kim, and I'm an alcoholic, and it felt like the weight of the world had been released from my shoulders. I felt like I finally was just me. No more pretending, no more lying, no more hiding. I was just Kim, and I'm an alcoholic. And life just made sense. It was like a bus crash in the movie where your life flashes before your eyes and all of a sudden everything kind of pieces together and the puzzle makes sense. And I sat in that room. I made it my home group and I went back every Wednesday night for the next 6 months. I didn't have a big book. I didn't have a sponsor. I didn't have a clue what was going on, but I didn't drink and I came back every week. And it was a bunch of old timers like, keep coming back, kid, you're doing great. I'm like, all right. And here I am the next week sitting there. My life was getting better because I wasn't drinking, so I wasn't making a lot of mistakes, but life wasn't getting great. But I was sober and I kept coming back and kept marking off the days on the calendar. Yeah, I'm good, I'm good. And then I just kind of stopped going to Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I wasn't really getting anything out of it. I had a sober person at home with me. Our relationship was good. We had the things back in our lives and some of the problems were gone away. So everything seemed to be fine. You know, yeah, step 1, I get it. You know, my life is unmanageable and I'm an alcoholic. Okay, well, my life's getting a little bit manageable now, so maybe I'm just an alcoholic. I didn't get it. I didn't get that foundation of step 1. Shortly after, I celebrated my 1 year sober, and my amazing girlfriends took me on a beautiful trip to Palm Springs, and we stayed in the Ritz-Carlton, and we were going to have a reset weekend celebrating my success 1 year sober, because, you know, that's what middle-class white girls do in the suburbs, is we're going to go party to celebrate you staying sober 1 year. But I didn't want to drink. I couldn't imagine having a hangover. So I stayed sober. And I came back and my world had turned upside down while I was away, and I no longer had a sober partner. I no longer had a stable home, and I had to make a choice. And the choice I made was that I was going to go out and I was going to get drunk, because screw this. I was mad. I had a resentment. I was like, you did me wrong while I was away, and I only did this for you. By the grace of God, my phone rang, and it was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous that said, hey, I haven't seen you at our home group in a while, and it's so-and-so's 27-year cake tomorrow, and you love him. Are you coming? And I just bawled. I bawled because I was on my way to buy alcohol and drink in the biggest fit of anger I had ever had. And I told the person what was going on, and they walked me to a meeting. Literally, put this address in your GPS, and I'm going to stay on the phone until you get there. And I got my butt back into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I started to do the program as shown to me by a bunch of social suburban sober girls. We had a step group. We went through the steps. And I was like, yes, this is great. I've got this amazing support group of women. They listen to all my troubles. I get to unload on them every Thursday. You know, we sit and we read the big book. We talk about the steps. And then we sit and we discuss our lives. And we just unload all of our crap to each other. And then I leave and I feel better because I've gotten it all off my chest. So I am working my program. Yay! And off I go like that for the next year. And I collect my 2-year medallion, and all my new friends are there, and everything is lovely, and life is great. 2 months later, my ex-husband died from a fentanyl overdose, leaving me as a lone parent. my kids lost their dad to this disease. And I started to spiral out of control. And I made a phone call to a friend that I had met at a meeting where they talked differently about Alcoholics Anonymous. They shared about the solution and the big book and God, and they had this weird sense about them, like they were on fire. And I was like, I called this girl, and her name was Emma, and I said, hey, you know these steps you guys talk about, this rapid set of steps? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, I want to try it. And she's like, okay, call me Wednesday, we'll get started. And I went to her house, and this is the scariest woman I've ever met. She introduces herself, Emma, total alcoholic, and she comes from a totally different area of town, and I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm ready. And I got to her home, and it was purple, and it was lovely, and I just felt welcomed, and I felt relaxed. And she showed me a plant that was a bill plant, and she explained the history of Alcoholics Anonymous in detail. And then we got into the book, and she read absolutely every word in the book to me, up into page 164. And she explained it all in detail, and it came alive. And from her, I got hope. The light that she was shining on me was this hope that I had never really seen before. And with that hope, I got a willingness to try the program her way. And I had a new open-minded thought process where I was like, those girls that we were doing it that way, that wasn't what it was about. Something different is going on here. And she started to explain the steps to me in a new way. She explained step 1 to me wasn't about my life being unmanageable in the sense that my bills were piling up and that, I was powerless over alcohol because my life was in the ditch. She explained to me that, I have no ability to stop once I start. How many times have I said I am never going to drink again? Never, 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 never am I ever going to drink again. And that night I would be drinking a Caesar. Or I'd have another glass of wine. Or, whatever. It would be 2 days later and I would be stopping my drink. And she explained the craving. Once I start drinking, I can't stop. How many times have I had said, oh, I'm just going to have 2 glasses of wine with dinner on a Friday night, and then it's Saturday morning, and I have drank 50 shots of tequila, and I was dancing on the bar once again, and now I'm at God knows whose house with like a bunch of strangers doing God knows who's what, and I'm having to figure out how to get home. And I understood what alcoholism was for that first time. And then she walked me through each of the steps. Step 2, become willing. I was really willing because I saw the God that she had in her life and how her life had become so wonderful, even though she came from a really, really dark place. And so I was willing to believe in a power greater than myself. At that time, I was only willing to believe in the universe. And there's about 7 different training wheel words for God in Bill's story. So if you don't like the word God, there's 7 other different versions. I call them training wheel words that you can use for God. So I was like, I'm going to do the universe one. That one's good for me. And from there, I started my beginning in this program. I did a proper step 4 where instead of writing down a list of everybody I hated and all of the things that they had done wrong to me, re-victimizing myself, I made an honest and thorough moral inventory of myself. And I looked at that list from an entirely different angle instead of looking at it as all the people who did me wrong and why they did me wrong and why I was mad. And I sat in it even more and got even more mad. I was able to see how my fears caused my actions and all my decisions were based on fear and my insecurities. And I was able to see those fears for what they were, and I was able to start praying them away. I gave them to God. And as a result, fears left my life entirely. And I read step 8 and step 9, and they were explained to me if I wasn't willing to do it, I could pray for the willingness to do it. Where everybody before that was like, if you want to be free, you go do these amends and you do them now. And that was really scary for me because there was people I didn't want to face. And she explained to me that if you're not willing to go face them, you're not ready yet. And you just need to pray for that willingness and to be ready. And from there, my whole world opened up. Life changed. I got involved in service. I fell in love with the big book, and I started reading it to anybody who would listen. I started going to a lot of meetings to find newcomers to talk to about the program because I was hyped. I was excited about it. And I understood that excitement I saw at that new meeting. I understood why these people were so excited about the book because of the feeling it gave me inside. You know, that ease and comfort I used to get from alcohol, I now got from reading a big book. I now got excited about reading Bill's story and about hearing how he had a spiritual awakening because I had a spiritual awakening. So I understood what he was talking about on page 14 when he says that there is a peace and serenity he had never known. You know, I wake up in the morning with this peace in my heart. My head is clear. I'm not racing and thinking and scheming and plotting. I wake up in the morning and I look out my window and I hear birds chirping and I'm just at peace. Page 14 also talks about an utter confidence. That's the confidence I faked when I was Carly Davidson. All those times I was playing a role in my life, I was faking confidence. And I now have that utter confidence where I don't have to play a role anymore. I've taken the mask off. I don't have to pretend. I can walk with my head held high and my shoulders held back because I'm playing the role I was meant to play the whole time. The role God had intended for me. Servant of God, sharing love and light. That was the role I was meant to play, not Carly Davidson or this lady or that lady I pretended to be. Once upon a time, I was from Georgia. I had this great accent. I was never just me. And now I am playing the role I was meant to be. I'm a servant of God. I walk in love and light. I share the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and I share hope. Because if we don't have hope and we don't see someone who's had that change happen, then there's no hope for us. Hope is the key of this program. It's the key that opens the door of willingness. If you never see someone that gives you hope, you will never be willing to do any of the things we ask you to do. So that's my job. My job is to be a light keeper. My job is to be a beacon of hope, to show people that there is hope and they can change, and give them that key, that willingness that opens the door and frees their mind to be open to the possibilities of this program. And it's all found in this book. The book I stole from that guy that cheated on me as I left the house because I said he doesn't need it anywhere. So now I have a living amends. Every time a newcomer needs a book, I buy a book for them. Any chance I can, read this book I stole to anyone, I will read it. And as a result, this book is well worn and it's given me a life greater than anything I've ever imagined and allowed me to be here with you all today, all from a little meeting I started 6 months ago. I was able to connect with people around the world and share my light and share my hope. And so my hope for you is that you can find that light too and then share it, because the light is good, but sharing it is fucking amazing. And seeing it come on in other people is the best gift of this program. It's better than anything else I've ever gotten, is seeing the light come on in other people. So thank you for having me today.